All right, so today we're going to look at another vigneta or vignette from La Casa en Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. So you all had to read this, and before I proceed with the analysis, let's just do a little quick summary of what the vigneta was about. So Esperanza, Nenny, Lucy, and Rachel, they are skipping and they are discussing the meaning of hips. The word caderas means hips in English. Very, very important. The title of this chapter, very, very important. We will come to that. Rachel says that hips are good for propping a baby on while cooking, as it says here, sirven para cargar al bebé cuando estás cocinando. And then, but Esperanza thinks that the idea is a bit unimaginative, as she says, no tiene imaginación. Lucy says that hips are for dancing, while Nenny, who is too young to understand what it's like to develop hips, says that without them, you might turn into a man. So, as she says here, um, es importante, pero lo más importante es que las caderas son científicas, sigo yo. Now, this is where Esperanza is explaining that it is a bit scientific. Esperanza defends Nenny, then tries to give a scientific explanation about the purpose of hips that gleamed or that she gleaned from Alicia. Esperanza believes, or begins to believe rather, that hips have a musical quality. Rachel, Lucy, and Esperanza make up original chants about hips as we see here throughout the vignetta, but there's a moment in which Nanny repeats a rhyme that she already knows, and Esperanza feels a bit embarrassed by this and will understand why she feels a bit embarrassed. Now, getting back into the title itself, the title Cadera or hips is usually significant when we look at a woman or a girl as she transcends into a woman. Hips is associated with a widening or broadening of a hip is usually a part of puberty for women or girls, and it signifies their transition from being a child or being a youth into an adolescent or or coming or getting into or entering rather adulthood. Now, we can see here that the novel begins with a really important phrase or a really important line as it says, Un día te despiertas y ahí están, listas y esperando como un buque nuevo con las llaves con el motor prendido, listas para llevarte a donde. So this, I would say, is in fact one of the most famous metaphor in this vignetta. It compares hips to a car, and a car symbolizes independencia, poder, movilidad y también peligro. So it symbolizes this sort of independence, power, mobility, as well as danger. It is something very exciting, right? It's something very exciting, especially at this particular age. But we have to understand that while it's exciting, they don't know how to conduce it, they don't know how to drive. And it reflects this mixture of anticipation and a sort of anxiety about coming of age, right? Which is obviously the turning point in this particular vignetta. This is one of the most important vignetta because it is a pivotal moment in the novel, marking the transition from childhood to adolescence for Esperanza and her friends. Okay, so here we have a conversation that's taking place throughout the vignetta, right? And the girls are mixing, or the girls mix vague scientific information, as it says, las caderas tienen huesos que se abren para dar lugar a los bebés, with practical and social ideas, las necesitas para bailar, si no tienes pareces hombre. The girls are using whatever information that is available to them and what they have observed around them to make these type of comments, right? So whatever as they are growing into, as they are now maturing or getting into this level of maturity, the girls are making observation, they are understanding, and they're trying to understand rather the importance of las caderas. The conversation, like I said, would reveal this. And then, of course, las canciones, as they make up these rhymes and these hymns or these chants, this las canciones that they invent about the hips, their rhymes reflect this new awareness of their bodies and their femininity. They are trying to understand from a musical point of view how their femininity works, or what it can represent as how, as well as how it is a part of them. But in within this or these rhymes, we can also see that there is a difference when it comes to Nenny. Is the younger of, or the youngest of the girls, and she doesn't really participate in the same conversation. She continues singing with her own nursery rhymes, which have nothing to do about hips. This definitely shows the brecha, it shows the gap, right? It highlights the gap that is widening between her and her older girls, or the older girls rather. And it tells us that Esperanza is now leaving her younger sister behind in a world that they once occupied, and now they are entering another, as we see in the lines. Está en un mundo al que nosotras ya no pertenecemos. Nini yéndose, yéndose. So this is a very powerful line because it tells us, so we understand. I mean, it's the end of it, but we understand that Neni is is not the same as them anymore. And Esperanza makes this observation, and she confirms this sort of separation. Esperanza realizes that she and her friends are sharing a growing up experience that her younger sister hasn't yet been part of. It's a bittersweet moment of growth and separation for Esperanza, her friends, and Nenny. Another very important line, as we see here, is pero lo más importante es que las caderas son científicas. Sirven para distinguir un esqueleto de hombre de uno de mujer, right? So the line captures perfectly the awkwardness, as well as it shows rather the attempt to use logic and science to understand what, or understand something, understand that is to them a mysterious as well as a little bit of frightening. So they are using their own way to ease with the awkwardness of this change, as well as to learn and rationalize with the change, so that they understand a little more as they are becoming aware, they're becoming conscious of it. And there's another phrase here that says, tienes que ensayar para saber qué hacer con las caderas. Cuando las tengas, digo yo. This entire line there, tienes que saber cómo caminar con caderas, la práctica, etc., basically highlights again the awkwardness as well as the lack of coordination of adolescence. Growing up is not a smooth process. It's a feeling of division, a feeling of, it's an uncomfortable feeling that you're in your own body. You're exploring different emotions, things, different hormones in your body. You have physical changes, and again, Esperanza and her friends are experiencing this, right? And they're saying that you have to practice being this new version of yourself. All right. So one of the most important theme that we have here is the fact that the caderas the caderas represent, like I said before, a certain level of change. It brings about the change that a girl or a woman goes through. It's like we say, convertirse en mujer, en su cultura y también en su mundo. So in her world, in her culture, it's converting, it's becoming, it's changing, it's becoming a woman, right? And we also would look at the cadera as part of the body, and the body is very symbolic as well. Hips are a physical tangible symbol of female maturity. They represent puberty, sexuality, motherhood, and of course, new identity. And they also did talk about that when they talk about cargar al bebé cuando estás cocinando también. There was a comical moment here that they talk about, pero no tengas muchos porque el trasero se te ensancha. So they are talking about, widening of the hips, and they're talking about using it during motherhood. So it's very important as it's an observation. And it takes us to another theme that is highlighted, which is basically conocimiento y imaginación. So we are looking at knowledge versus imagination, right? Conocimiento e imaginación. Las niñas intentan entender ese cambio biológico. So they try to understand this biological change with whatever little information that they have. They fill in the gaps with their imaginations, their observations of the woman around them. And I mean, this shows how naive they are, but yet it also shows their desire to understand the adult world, to understand the world which they're about to enter. And most importantly, here as well, it shows you the generational gap. Like I mentioned, the vignette highlights that Esperanza, Lucy, and Rachel are crossing a threshold that Nini cannot yet cross, right? They are entering a world of adolescence and self awareness as women, while Nini remains in the innocence of a child, innocence of childhood. Esperanza noticed this separation, like I said, and it's a bit bittersweet, but she has to understand, or she understands that this is her life, this is what is happening to her, right? So as I said, this vignetta is one of the central or pivotal vignetta in the novel because it gives us an idea of the change, or it starts the change that Esperanza goes through as she enters some sort of the level of maturity. She's maturing. So we need to figure out what is the narrative point of view, and of course, if it's subjective or objective. So based on the information here, we are seeing yo, we are seeing the nosotros, right? So you can you can figure that out, and we're going to write about it.